Hello, this is Kev Ryan, and we are going to be here with another Horizon Wars Zero Dark mission report. This is going to be for the third and final mission of Operation Gemini, which is the scenario for solo play in the base game. Horizon Wars Zero Dark is a miniatures agnostic, small scale, so squad size skirmish game put out by Precinct Omega, which I have been really enjoying. Our mission today is going to be Mission 3, Fight Out, which is a very fun mission wherein we're going to start on one side of the map and have to run all the way to the other side of the map. As this is happening, the enemies are going to be trying to shoot at us and hunt at us, and we're going to be trying to maneuver as stealthily as possible. It's really quite a bit different from the other two missions. Those missions involve objectives in the center of the board that you have to go interact with. This one, it's all about movement and keeping yourself away from the enemies and that sort of thing. I will say, in Operation Nemesis, there is a very similar mission that I think personally is a little bit of a better implementation than this one, but I like them both. I like this mission. It's a great way to end Operation Gemini, and I'm excited to talk about it. So, what's special about this mission? The first thing is the deployment. We are going to start in one corner, we are going to start hidden, and then on the total other corner, there is going to be the objective, which is how we leave. The other thing that's funky is how the bogeys are deployed. When deploying a bogey, you basically flip a coin to decide if they are going to deploy where your heroes are at the start or on the objective that's at the end. Then you're going to roll their deployment in the usual fashion, and if they don't actually end up spawning on the board, because these objectives are in the corner, then they are instead put into what's called the reserve. And the way that the immediate reserves work is that after every secondary action of the bogeys, you're going to pick a member of the immediate reserve and deploy them according to those same normal rules. So what this means is that there aren't going to be that many bogeys on the field when you start. About half of them are going to be way over there, half of them are going to be right next to you, but then as the mission goes on, they're going to continue to have new bogeys spawning at either of those two locations. As a mechanic, I will have some things to say about that, but as an idea, I think that's really cool, and it makes this really different. Here then is the map. Because I am very silly, I actually forgot to take a map picture at the very beginning, so instead we'll have to look at this picture at near the end, but it kind of showcases what's going on. Down here in this corner, you have the objective where you start, so all my guys started around there, and up there you have the objective where you finish. As you can see, I have drawn these red lines here. This is going to mark out a 3-foot by 3-foot table. Personally, I think a properly designed 2-foot by 4-foot table could work for this mission as well, but you really want to make sure that there is enough distance between the start and the end that the mission actually works in some senses. A big part of this mission is trying to get all of your characters to traverse a fairly long distance while also trying to be safe. That takes a lot of activations, and you don't have that much time as far as the clock goes. So you need a map that has sufficient distance in order to make that a real challenge. And none of the infinity boards that I like to play with when I'm playing on Tabletop Simulator really were designed to have the kind of zigzagging path that I think you would need in order to do this on a 2-foot by 4-foot board. I have played it, in my house on a 2-foot by 4-foot board in the way that I basically just described, and the mission works, really well for that. But here I'm doing a 3-foot by 3-foot carve out. I could do the full 4 feet, but again, I just feel like if I'm using a 4-foot by 4-foot board, there's so much of the board that just doesn't get used, and I just don't think it's worth it. So 3-foot by 3-foot, and I will run down the clock by 10 cards in order to pay for that, which is my standard way of running down the clock. Here's what the situation looks like at my deployment. As you can see, there is an elite here and an elite here, and really not much else deployed near me. There are 2 grunts that got randomly deployed at the objective on the other side. And then you've got my 3 characters, Recon, Cap, and Nomad. All 3 of them are in contact with the starting marker, and because of the scenario special rules, the 3 of them are currently not visible while they remain in contact with that thing. The idea here is I think that we're hiding under a sewer grate or something like that, and we have to make a dash from our current location all the way across the map to get to that other location, but while we're in the sewer grate or the vault or whatever, the enemies can't see us. And yeah, here's the enemy deployment. As you can see, there's just 2 of them, and they're grunts. Of course, a little bit of back-of-the-envelope math will tell you that this means there are 2 grunts, 1 or 2 elites, and a boss that are still in the strategic reserve. That's about half of the opposition, and it does point to one of the things in this particular mission that are a little bit clunky. The clunky part is that according to the rules, for each guy, you roll to see where they deploy. First, you flip a coin to see whether it's at the objective or at the starter line, then you roll using the normal grid method to see where they end up. After that, you then check to see, okay, did they end up deploying off the board? And if they deployed off the board, then they go into the reserve instead. Likewise, when pulling someone from the reserve onto the map, the same process repeats itself. Coin flip, normal deployment, check to see if they're off the map, etc. What's clunky is that you're doing a lot of work in order to simply determine whether the guy actually gets to deploy legally or not. Like, you've got the coin flip, then you've got to measure their deployment from the objective, and then if it turns out they're off the board, then they go into the reserve. And then when they're coming off from the reserve, the same thing can happen, and they could just stay in the reserve again. So you've got a lot of work that's being done, and a lot of the time, when you do that work, the answer that you come up with is, oh, just kidding, the work that you just did, it doesn't apply. And it's not like this is a huge amount of work per se. I mean, it takes 2, 3, 6 seconds? But those 2, 3, 6 seconds are going to add up, they can get repeated, and I also think they're kind of just unnecessary. So this implementation ends up being a little bit clunky in order to get at what it's trying to achieve. Consequently, I think that there is a mission in Operation Nemesis, which is very similar to this one, starting from a hidden position, having to run across the map, and I think that implementation is basically just less clunky, more refined than this one. So I like both the missions. I think the core concept is good, but Operation Nemesis, more refined, etc. And, you think about it, Operation Nemesis came out quite a bit after this one did, so it had better be more refined, right? In that sense, really no complaints. But it's something I thought I'd point out. Okay, starting from the starting point, let's go. What we have to do is get all 3 of these guys all the way across the map, all the way over there to the exit. While we stay touching this thing, our heroes are going to be mostly safe. And I only say mostly safe, so they're going to be outside of line of fire of the enemies, which means enemies can't shoot at them. And as long as they don't activate, the bogeys nearby probably aren't going to be the ones that are activating. Like, for example, if Recon is way over there, he's probably going to be activating enemies that are way over there. So if you stay behind, you are mostly safe. However, you're only mostly safe because what I decided is just because you are out of line of sight of the enemies doesn't mean the enemies won't move towards you if you are the closest trooper. So if this guy activates, and if the situation were what it currently is, what I would have him do is basically walk in this direction and then end up in contact with Recon Silhouette. This will trigger a CQB fight, and frankly, because CQB is really dangerous, they're both probably going to take some wounds. Cinematically, this makes sense as the bogeys sticking their head into the narrow gate to see if any of my guys are in there. And tactically, it means there is some pressure to be careful with how I am doing my movement. I don't know if that's exactly rules as intended or rules as written for this particular mission, but it's how I have chosen to play it the couple of times I've played it, and I think it's pretty fun, so no complaints there. If you have a strong opinion otherwise, of course, feel free to let me know in the comments. But with those rules in place, let's talk strategy. Now, Recon, motorcycle, by far the fastest of my group. Cap, being stealthy, is kind of sort of the second fastest. The way that stealthy works is that if you generate bonus actions from a cautious move, you can use as many of them as you like on someone's, stealth move bonus action. So in principle, he can take a cautious move, and then he can move himself an awful lot off of the bonus actions. It's probably not as fast as Recon's going to go, but it allows me to move with fairly good speed while taking cautious moves. Nomad, then, is the slowest of the bunch. She's decent at creeping and crawling with cautious moves, but she's also the best fighter, and so if I need to kill stuff, it'll probably be with Nomad. The strategy, then, is that I'm going to start off with Recon, and I'm just going to try to get him out of there. I think he's going to run around to that position. Once he's at that position, I can then try to maybe creep him over here, behind this, breaking line of fire, and end up roughly over in that position. That will make him distant from everybody else, and it will still keep him in the game. Being distant is nice because, remember, the bogey that activates is the one of the appropriate type that is closest to the trooper that just activated. So if there's a problem with Nomad or Cap, I can activate Recon, and the one that's causing a problem for Cap or Nomad probably won't activate off of Recon. Nevertheless, because he's got that target designator, he may still be able to participate constructively in whatever situation Nomad or Cap are in. As Recon is doing his move over in that direction, Nomad is going to be moving in this direction. The idea is pretty straightforward with that. I just want to get her behind this thing so there's no line of fire, and then there's like a pretty good alley that I can just run straight up in that direction. Hopefully she can get like as far along as possible. I can activate Recon to help her out if needed, and the two of them will accomplish most of what they need to accomplish before I finally decide to activate Cap and have him run across the same route. Here is the same situation after the first move. Just one move, I'm able to get all the way over there. Even with his movement speed penalized, Recon is nice and fast. That motorcycle, man. Don't think too hard about how a motorcycle was, smuggled out of an air vent. Maybe it's a smart motorcycle. It's the future. Next up, Recon. She's going to move in this position. I think she actually just does this with a sprint. She's got an 8-inch sprint, and if I can break line of fire with the enemy, I am substantially safer than if I cannot break line of fire with the enemy. As this is happening, an enemy grunt is going to spawn and then move over here and get a support token. This is actually pretty decent for me. The grunt is very distant from all of my other guys, and also the activity is happening away from Cap. Right now, kind of the worst thing that could happen is if a bunch of elites activated and those elites just wandered straight into Cap and killed him in melee. I mean, he's pretty good in melee, so like, of people that get stuck in melee, I'd rather Cap than anyone else, but it's still a risk. As we can see here, as this guy was moving, Recon got targeted. I think I must have drawn a diamond. I am then going to have Recon run all the way over to here. He is doing that in order to draw this elite away from everybody else. I think he ends up closer to this elite in some capacity. I don't exactly remember, but he is drawing one of the elites off. And then I'm going to have Nomad move up, and she does get light of fire on that guy, and so takes a pot shot. I don't think much comes of it. Maybe I knock someone out, but if I do, it's going to get fixed later. This long-range shot, by the way, does highlight one thing that I think is kind of cool about the dice mechanic in Horizon Wars Zero Dark, which is that the dice mechanic supports you ending up in situations where you have a really long and therefore difficult shot where you just need like 1 or 2 successes. And you can also have situations where it's a close-range shot against a guy that has a bunch of wounds, and therefore you need a whole bunch of successes. And the dice mechanic supports both situations. I think that's cool and nifty, and this situation highlights it. Meanwhile, another elite has spawned over in this position near Cap. Cap has gotten targeted, and actually, technically, you'll notice that this elite is probably illegally deployed. He probably should have been in the reserve, but at this point, I've also just been rolling reserves that just don't get put on the map again and again, and I decide, what the heck, I'll put people on the map even if this narrow gate is a little bit misplaced. Situation continues, and really what's going to happen over the next couple of orders is Nomad is going to swing up this way, trying to eliminate whoever she can. As you can see, she killed whatever bogey was over here. I don't want to kill all of the grunts, but I do want to kill some of the grunts. And, she's the best tool for that job. She eventually ends up in this position, and as you can see, she hasn't made a lot of progress killing people. Part of that is because I think one more grunt does spawn, but the other part of it is that people are regenerating, and their support tokens getting put down, and so on and so forth. Notice that there's an elite over here, by the way. She is clearing out enemy support tokens and moving closer through this process, and that is kind of nice. However, she's not killing enemies because they are generating support tokens at about the rate she is removing them. In fact, clearly they are generating support tokens slightly faster than she can remove them. That's partly a consequence of getting unlucky. It's also just partly a consequence of how the game works. Anyway, at that point, we've had enough elite activations that things are going to get spicy. The guy that had been tucked around the corner, I think here, or maybe on top of this box, I don't remember exactly, but one of the 2 elites from the very beginning finally gets an activation and moves into melee with Cap. Now, it ain't the worst. He clearly only takes a wound, but things are getting dangerous. Meanwhile, as we are kind of seeing, at least one complication has been rolled because this is an enemy EWAP operator. I think another complication was rolled and had this guy show up there, if I'm not mistaken. Clearly there's a boss here, and clearly the enemies have lots of different tokens around them. So I kind of decide, okay, Cap, your situation is dangerous. You've got, actually it looks like it's 2 wounds, and so 2 wounds is going to give him a mild stat penalty, and it's really time to get out of there. It's a little risky, but he will cautious move to this situation. He is getting a -1 die on everything here, but he's still really good at sneaking. He's also getting a -1 inch to his movement, which is going to make this much more painful than it needs to be. And in particular, I'm really, really worried that he's targeted. He doesn't have a support token. If I had gotten a boss activation and if the boss had shot my poor guy here, that could be it for Cap. Fortunately, that doesn't happen, and he's able to get to safety. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, Nomad over here is having a gunfight. As you can see, we've eliminated the special that was over here, or the elite that was over here, and we've killed the grunt there, and have taken a couple of wounds in response. Cap continues his adventure off in this direction. This particular situation was happening when this guy activated and had to shoot someone, and the person that he was shooting was Recon. Recon's targeted, so that's not great. But aside from the targeted, this isn't a terrible situation because the elite has, 2 support tokens. Elites have a decent fight score, I think, of 3, so he's rolling a lot of dice, but he's at a fairly big distance. And that distance means that those dice won't add up to be too bad. And if I recall correctly, Recon does get some wounds, but we managed to bleed those 2 support tokens from that one elite in a way that is not catastrophic. If he had been shooting Cap, for example, that would have been an awful lot of dice at Cap at much closer range. He was already wounded, so this is really the best outcome that I could hope for. As we're doing this, we're going to be careful to kill the enemies that we can, but still leave enough enemies behind that we don't start getting that consequence cascade that we talked about last time. In particular, what I want to do is I want to let this elite wander up a few more activations before I kill him. Once he's dead, this elite will start activating, and that'll be really nice because the 2 of them can just soak up some activations without much happening. Ultimately, we end up in this situation. As you can see, Recon has healed some of his wounds, Nomad has gotten up to here, and Cap has made it all the way over here. Meanwhile, we've killed the last grunt that was over here, and this guy, I can't remember if he redeployed from a complication or just like another guy was spawned from a complication. Either way, there is an elite over here, which is kind of sucky, but most of my troopers have gotten into this position. Dealing with this guy is straightforward, and so all that's left is to have lots of activations as the sole remaining boss basically has to wander from like over here all the way up to here. Bosses are marginally faster than grunts, but it's still a long way to go. At this point, I could simply finish the mission and have everybody leave, and I think I really should do that. That would be the more fun thing to do, and I think also it would be the tactically wise thing to do. Instead, though, I've got this like thing in my head where I want to get as much experience as I can, even though I know this is the last mission, and one thing you get experience for is if everybody leaves in a totally healthy fashion. So what I end up doing is spending a whole bunch of orders trying to have Recon fix people up, and in that process, the boss just gets closer and closer. He takes some shots, he gets lucky on those shots, he inflicts some wounds, which means, of course, I have more doctoring to do. And anyway, minutes and minutes and minutes pass, and like of real life because of these activations, and I don't actually get any closer to getting that one extra experience point that I would get if everyone were healthy. So ultimately, I end up in this position. I decide, all right, you know what? It's time to go. Let's get everybody out of there. Let's not worry about the details, and we're done. If you think about it, that makes a little bit more sense anyway. Why would you be doing first aid on the battlefield where you're getting shot at versus as you escape? So I don't mind deciding that, okay, the thing that I should actually have been doing the whole time is simply leaving and calling the mission a win. And it's a win. All told, I actually quite enjoy this mission. It's a very different tactical situation, and you get to do things differently than normal. In particular, because the enemies are split up, you have a lot more control over whether you're activating people from way over there or over here. And the challenge of trying to move your entire team across the board is one which is also, different from one where you just have to accomplish your objective. So I really like this mission. Yes, it's a little bit clunky, especially with the reserve mechanic. But if that really bothers you, then you can get Operation Nemesis and play the similar mission in Operation Nemesis that is a more refined version of the same thing. In fact, I think saying go get Operation Nemesis and play through Operation Nemesis, that's not bad advice at all. The only recommendation that I would give when I talk about Operation Nemesis is say that it's a little bit difficult. If you are starting the game with 4 characters without that many upgrades, which is what the rules recommend as you're learning the game to do, I think you'll find Operation Nemesis to be kind of hard. I think starting with a single shot of Rescue is a great place to start, then play through Operation Gemini, and once you've done those things, you will understand the rules well enough in order to make a team and play through Operation Nemesis, which is 12 missions, more if you have to rescue people, and generally it's just a really good time. All of which is to say, I remain excited about Horizon Wars Zero Dark, and if you're excited too, then great. Either way, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you around.